All right, folks, back here with you again today. Today we are going to be measuring for a custom drive shaft. So they plan on putting trans brake in here this year. I have the transmission and everything for it to swap it out. So in order to do that, I'm going to need a bigger, heavier drive shaft. Exact same transmission as this one, just the other one's got a trans brake in it. So we're going to use this one for measuring purposes. So what they told me to do was take this yoke, sink it all the way in the transmission, and then pull it out 3/4 of an inch to measure for drive shaft play. So what I'm going to do is pull this drive shaft out, and we'll do that. All right, I got my yoke put in here, and get a little focus here. You can see my line. That's where it completely bottoms out in the transmission. Then I pulled it out 3/4 of an inch. And then what you do is you measure from this center line right here, nice and indexed there for you, to the center line here. So it's always best if you can turn them sideways like this. This one I can't yet. I'm having some clearance issues right in here. So eventually, before I put this drive shaft in, I'm going to have to cut this off and move it over and down actually a little bit to get me all the clearance I need to on that drive shaft. So I'll have to do that probably when I'm changing the transmission, be the best time, because I'll have that cross member out anyways. But I can at least measure for the drive shaft, because that little tiny bit is not going to make a difference in this drive shaft length. So I've got her done, 47¼ inches, and I will mark that down and phone the guys at Coast Powertrain in the morning and get them to start building me a drive shaft when I bring them this yoke, probably tomorrow at lunchtime. I'll probably just tell them everything then. And then, yeah, we'll go from there. So I will rip this yoke back out, and I will put the other drive shaft back in, and we'll see what else we can tackle. All right, guys, back to work again here. So I told you before, we're going to be changing the master cylinder out because it's leaking. So we're doing that. Remove the 2 lines, 2 nuts hold it on. Movie magic, comes right out. But this is also a lot of extra weight, so 4 bolts back here, and it's coming out. And then there's the 1 rod underneath the dash here, simple little clip, and it comes right off. And then you can pull the whole master cylinder. Alright, so now that we got the booster out, which was what I meant to say earlier under the dash, we're going to repurpose this rod because it already got the hookups for the brake pedal. So we'll take some shit out here, rip that rod out, and continue. Alright, so after we took the rod out, I mounted the master cylinder in place. Nice thing about this one was I was expecting all to get busy in here and build a big adapter plate and everything. But these top 2 bolts, or studs with nuts, lined right up to the hole that went through the firewall, so I didn't have to build anything. The ones below it, I put the nuts back on, because it holds structure under the dash, and then I just trim the studs right down. So that's something to keep in mind. And then for clearance purposes, because the steering column gets in the way here, I had to move the proportioning valve and the line lock and everything way down here. So everything's good. I got lots of clearance between everything, and we're all good there. So everything hooked right up. What I did is I used on this one a Chevy truck master cylinder with an 1¼ inch bore. So that's quite a bit bigger than what the factory one for the Trans Am is. The factory Trans Am one I think is 1 inch. So this is an 1¼ inch. I figured if we move more fluid, the brakes are going to work better. A lot of people go to the Mopar one, which is 1 1/8. I decided to go a little bit bigger, keep it more of a Chevy product. So I used a Cardone one. I'll grab you a snapshot of the part number over here. Alright, so after I did that, what I did was I went in underneath the dash here. Alright, never fun getting underneath the dash, but the rod was a little longer. Sorry I had to do all this stuff without showing you guys what exactly I was doing. I had people in the shop and it was too noisy and stuff to do this properly. So the rod was a little longer, so what I did is I set it in the master and held it out here, and then I made a mark on the center of the stud on the brake pedal on the push rod there. But when you're doing that, make sure you hold the brake pedal as far forward as you're going to need it. So I made a mark, and then I went to the bench, and then I measured from that mark to the center of the push rod hole that goes onto the brake pedal, and that was 1.5 inches, and that's what I cut off the other end, because you want to make sure you keep that one end. So I just use that for measuring purposes from the center of that hole to my mark, which I marked in the center of that stud, and it gave me 1.5 inches. I took off a little bit less than that, so I had some room to play and maneuver in there, because when you want to get it all done, you want to have a nice taper to go into the master cylinder, so there's not going to be sharp edges on sharp edges. You can have round edges on round edges. Things going to work a lot better. So I left about an extra 1/8 of an inch, and then I rounded it, and it seemed to work out perfect for me. If you're doing this, you might want to leave a little extra just in case. You don't want to have too short of a stud, because then you just don't want things coming apart. So you want to be able to get your full stroke out of the master cylinder and the brake pedal. So that's what I did. So everything's hooked up now. I had one of the guys that was here with me help me bleed everything. I found more air in the system because my master cylinder was shot. It was sucking in air and pushing it through my lines. So we bled everything. So this is the finished product, and it only weighs a couple of pounds. That is a very light. That brake booster itself weighs more than the master cylinder that I took out. That brake booster. And this master cylinder weighs even more than what that brake booster does. So I probably dropped a good 10 pounds doing that. I needed to do the master anyways. You can see this thing's been leaking and sucking air in for a while, so it's garbage. This thing got brake fluid and corrosion in it. It's garbage. Going to the metal recycling bin. So the car's now a few pounds lighter. I have actual brakes, and so that makes us a lot safer again. So you got to keep this in mind all the time. Safety is a big thing when you're racing. So you want to keep everything tight. You want to keep your brakes working really well. You want to keep your engine, transmission, rear diff so they're not leaking oil. Because if they're leaking oil, it gets under your tires. Nasty things can happen. So safety is a big thing. So let's keep that up. Next thing I'm going to do is remove this front structure here that was put in here. These guys decided to, the old owners decided they were going to cut some weight and throw that in there. So I'm going to cut some more weight. They were going to use it as a street machine, that's why they kept it in there. I'm not using it as a street machine, so it can come right out. So it's 4 bolts down in underneath the frame here. See if we can get a good shot of that. Yeah, right there. 2 bolts on this side, 2 bolts on the other side, and we'll be good to go. I'll rip that out, and that'll pretty much be my day. We're ready to go racing again. Everything's safe, good to go. All right, we'll see. All right, since tomorrow's first Friday night, I'll have this bad boy out. I decided it was time to throw the slicks on, being as that's tomorrow. Yeah. So yeah, we got them on there. 28 10.5 15s. Fairly big and wide for this car. The car's not tubbed at all or anything, so these are about the biggest I can put in there until I start coming out past the body line, which you can see I am right there. So what I'm going to do now is slide underneath the car here, and we're going to do a little bit of checking for clearance. As you can see, there's not a lot, but there's enough. So I'll finish checking the rest of them, the rest of the spots it possibly hit, and then we're going to tear off some passes tomorrow. All right, see you guys later.